Russia may fully redirect gas exports from Europe to Asia-Pacific region, claims expert. An energy expert at a Russian firm stated that Moscow's gas supply to Europe may be fully redirected to the Asia-Pacific region, where demand is growing. Amid the ongoing war in Eastern Europe, an energy expert at the Russian firm Vigon Consulting stated that Moscow's gas supply to Europe may be completely redirected to the Asia-Pacific region, where demand is growing. Speaking to Sputnik on Sunday, Ivan Timonin also claimed that the process would necessitate rapid infrastructure modernization. Russian exports now flowing to Europe could potentially be diverted to the Asia-Pacific region in full. It requires, however, active development of export infrastructure, construction of new gas pipelines and liquefied natural gas plants, which is also time-consuming, he added. According to the expert, Russia's desire to reroute gas flows to Asia stems not just from Europe's desire to stop buying Russian energy but also from market forces. Timonin further claimed that Asian countries would account for more than half of global natural gas demand by 2021, with consumption rising by 160 billion cubic meters, mostly in China, and he further stated that the construction of the Power of Siberia pipeline, which supplies gas to China, took 5 years and large-scale gas liquefaction plants will take the same amount. To keep gas exports at the same level, Russia should already start developing new projects and take investment decisions, Timonin added. According to reports, supplies through the Power of Siberia pipeline began in late 2019 and reached 4.1 billion cubic meters in 2020. The volume of supply is expected to increase until reaching the design annual capacity of 38 billion cubic meters by 2025. Taking into account the new February agreement, overall supply capacity along the Far Eastern route to China could reach 48 billion cubic meters per year. Russia to redirect coal supplies to alternative markets amid mounting EU sanctions. Meanwhile, amid mounting sanctions on Russia in the wake of its incessant military aggression in Ukraine, the Kremlin stated last month that Moscow will redirect coal supplies to alternative markets after the European Union rejected the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the coal shipments will be diverted to different markets as Europe refused to consume it. It should be mentioned here that several countries across the world have imposed numerous sanctions against Russia since it launched a full-fledged war in Ukraine on February 24. Russia says NATO membership of Finland, Sweden will disrupt security in Europe. Russia's ambassador to Canada, Oleg Stepanov stated that Finland and Sweden joining NATO would be damaging to their security. As Finland and Sweden are seeking NATO membership, Russia has expressed its displeasure on the situation, stating that it could disrupt security in Europe. Russian ambassador to Canada, Oleg Stepanov stated that Finland and Sweden joining NATO would be damaging to their and Europe's security and that the two countries will be compelled to deal with Russia as an adversary. He further stated that if this happens, Russians must alter their impression of previously neutral countries as launching pads for NATO threats. As per reports of Sputnik, Stepanov stated that U.S. policymakers have decided to expand NATO while ignoring Russian security concerns. The envoy also cautioned that NATO expansion, particularly Finland and Sweden's possible membership, would exacerbate tensions. He further said that NATO is a nuclear military machine that has arrived at Russia's doorstep, adding that accepting Finland and Sweden into the fold extends NATO's contact line with Russia by more than 1,300 km. He claimed that the borders, which have been politically and militarily stable until now, will be thrown into the arc of NATO-Russia tensions if the two countries join NATO. Stepanov went on to say that the US and NATO bureaucracies are employing a variety of strategies to persuade certain political camps in Finland and Sweden to forego their peaceful way of life and change Northern Europe from a zone of military non-alignment, stability and prosperity into yet another. Finland and Sweden would lose their sovereign status, Russian envoy. The envoy stated that Finland and Sweden would lose their sovereign and autonomous status and will be forced to follow the collective NATO discipline imposed by the US, which is sometimes incompatible with their security needs. He continued by stating that Finns and Swedes should carefully assess the circumstances before deciding on NATO membership. Stepanov also said, "Do Finns and Swedes really want to be pulled in the US geopolitical march against Russia? We are neighbors, and the price of responsibility for the three of us is much higher than for the ideologues in Washington." In these testing times for European security, one can only hope wisdom prevails, so that the Finnish and Swedish constituents and their elected representatives once again review and assess whether the NATO enticements are. Serbia to reintroduce mandatory military service for men, President makes 90-day proposal. In a major development, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić proposed mandatory military services for at least 90 days for all men in the country. In a major development, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić proposed mandatory military services for men in the country. According to a report by Pereld, the president has proposed compulsory military service for at least 90 days. Earlier, it was speculated that the president would propose mandatory military service for at least 6 months or for a year. As per the proposed idea, this would make the youngsters more loyal and mature. My proposal will be to introduce compulsory military service lasting 90 days in the next period. It is not 6 months, not 365 days. This is how men become mature, learn what patriotism is, what duty is, Pereld quoted the minister at. However, he stressed that the country will maintain its neutrality and added Serbia will not join the NATO alliance. Serbia will remain military neutral. Our desire is to be the only country that is not a member of NATO, and we will adhere to this policy, added the president. The president said he cannot forget the children who were killed in the 1999 conflict when the military alliance bombarded the former Yugoslavian state. Irrespective of its claim, it has secretly received a set of sophisticated Chinese anti-aircraft systems last month. According to multiple media reports, at least 6 Chinese Air Force Y-20 transport planes landed at Belgrade civilian airport. Serbia's action does not match its promise. As per the military experts, these transport planes reportedly carry HQ-22 surface-to-air missile systems which will be inducted into the Serbian. Notably, Serbia is an ally of Russia, and the delivery of the lethal weapons at this crucial period raised eyebrows over the intention of the Serbian military. The purchase of lethal weapons came despite a staunch warning from the Western nations. The purchase triggered fear among the defense experts as they assumed that China's move could encourage the Balkan country towards another war, especially against its former province of Kosovo, which proclaimed independence in 2000. UK pledges additional $1.6 billion support for Ukraine to combat Russian aggression. The funding, which will be procured from the Treasury's emergency reserves, has been allocated by the British Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak. UK pledges additional $1.6 billion support for Ukraine to combat Russian aggression. The funding, which will be procured from the Treasury's emergency reserves, has been allocated by the British Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak. In a key development, Britain has pledged an additional funding package worth £1.3 billion, $1.6 billion, for Ukraine to deter Russia's military aggression and incessant assaults that commenced on February 24. The funding, which will be procured from the Treasury's emergency reserves, has been allocated by the British Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak. It has been reviewed by UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, according to the UK newspaper The Sunday Times. Apart from this, UK is also donating 287 mobile generators to Ukraine to run relief centres, hospitals, phone masts, and water pumping stations. The British government acted on a request from the Ukrainian ambassador Vadim Prystaiko, who welcomed the previous shipment of generators. UK's Business and Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng said that Putin's atrocities have continued to escalate, and so they are ramping up their support to the Ukrainian people in their time of need. Their donation of a further 287 generators will ensure more essential services in Ukraine can keep running, he added. Boris Johnson pledges military support to Ukraine. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson also made a speech to the Verkhovna Rada, Ukraine's parliament, via video conference this week. Ukrainian population and its military's defense and resistance against Russia's aggression has been the country's finest hour, UK Prime Minister Johnson had said, echoing Winston Churchill's speech made during the Blitz in 1940. Johnson then pledged further military support for Ukraine to deter Russia's aggression. Putin's brutal attack is not only causing untold devastation in Ukraine, it is also threatening peace and security across Europe, Johnson told a press conference. The UK was the first country to recognize the scale of the threat and send arms to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. We will stand by that endeavor, working with our allies to ensure Ukraine can continue to push back the Russian invasion and survive as a free and democratic country, he added. Highest military spending by Britain since Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The recently announced $1.6 billion aid is the highest military spending by Britain since the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The funds were announced at the meeting of the G7 leaders, and Boris Johnson is also expected to consult the arms companies to boost the production in order to meet the Ukrainian military's demand. The newly approved package includes £300 million in military equipment, anti-battery radar systems to counter the Russian artillery, GPS jamming equipment and night vision devices. UK has already delivered the next-generation light anti-tank weapons, NLAWs, to the Ukrainian forces during the initial days of the war. As per the request of Ukraine's government, the UK also committed up to £2 million in vital food supplies like dried food, tinned goods and water to areas of Ukraine encircled by Russian forces. 17 trucks of food with over 50,000 kilograms of pasta, 10,000 kilograms of rice, 60,000 tins of corned beef and over 80,000 litres of water have already been delivered. £45 million in UK funding has also been confirmed for UN and humanitarian organisations working in Ukraine to support and protect the most vulnerable, including women and children in Ukraine fleeing the conflict. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said that UK has stood shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine throughout this conflict.